How much impact will Florida State's young offensive skill players have against the Gators?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. I am a longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet, and you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's show is packed with a lot of information. Going to talk about several of Florida State's players as they performed against Charleston Southern, the reps, how they're going to be used against Florida. But back end of the show is more important because that's when we're going to talk about how they can be impactful against the Gators passing game defense that is garbage when it comes to giving up big plays. A little precursor here. Florida is 132nd out of 134 teams when it comes to giving up plays of 20 or more in passing. So one play of 20 or more. There's only 134 teams. Florida is nearly at the very bottom. So they have mental errors. I know they played against Ole Miss last weekend and did pretty well considering the Ole Miss got a lot of talent. But there's a lot of holes there, so we're going to get to that. Beginning of this show, though, is also interesting with the front end, the freshmen, and then how Florida State can attack. I got 7 keys that I'm going to talk about, so let's get to it. Here are the numbers for Florida State with the young players this past weekend and then what they've done season totals. Luke Kromenhoek played almost the whole game, 51 snaps. He's up to 159 reps for the season. Brock Glenn played 7 snaps. He's up to 224. Tofili is a guy, I brought this up because I want to use him in conjunction with the young players. He still led Florida State. He's obviously a grad student with 26 carries, and he's at 432. But it's important that he doesn't have to be counted on as much to carry the load because Cam Davis, 17 reps. He's back in the lineup. He's good to go. I'm going to talk about him quite a bit. And Sam Singleton had 9 reps. They have Keziah Holmes as well. Florida State's running back room is pretty darn good. If you look at the opportunity to get past that, the tight end room is the one I'm most excited about. Landon Thomas and Amari Williams. Landon had 34 reps. He's up to 244 for the season. Amari, 21 reps. He's up to 130. And then you get into the receivers, and it's a hodgepodge of players that have played. But again, it's not just about who has played. It's about the reps going up and down for different players. As an example, Jaylen Brown only played 5 reps. And for the season, he's at 158. He started a couple games earlier this year. He has been moved down the depth chart. BJ Gibson only got 9 reps, but a few weeks ago, he really wasn't playing. So he's starting to get playing time. But Wayne McCoy had 22. He's up to 104. Hakeem Williams, 26. He's up to 263. Ja'Kai Douglas, obviously your main guy. But they only had to use him 20 reps. That's good. They're saving him for Florida, 379. And then Malik Benson, again, he's been a guy that's played a ton. He's got the most reps of any receiver. He only played 27. So they're relying on the young players. That is very, very important. As it relates to the guys that I think are most impactful against Florida, out of those players, I think Cam Davis is the most important. Again, Tofili, he's going to be in the game. He's your starting running back. Very good football player. He'll get a chance to make some money in the National Football League. They need to be able to balance it out. Maybe go 2-back sets. Maybe put Tofili out wide, screens, different things. And Cam is a load. He's 220 pounds. If you're going to run some quarterback keep, quarterback RPO, etc., you have to respect Cam as a runner and or as a blocker, depending on the play. I think he's going to get 8 to 10 touches as a running back in this game. Obviously, you got to block for him, but he's the guy that can grind out a 2-yard run and turn it into a 4 or 5, staying ahead of the chains. You're not beating Florida this weekend unless you run the ball for 3.5, 4 yards a carry. I have serious reservations about whether or not that's going to happen, but you're going to need an extra level of performance from all the running backs. Keziah is important. Obviously, when Sam gets in the game, that's an important part. Tofili. But Cam is going to not only help you in the middle of the field, this is where it gets really interesting. As a red zone defense for the Gators, I'll give them credit. They held, Ole Miss screwed this up so bad, but they still held them 0 for 3. At the end of the day, that's an excellent job by the Gators. Overall this season, they're pretty solid in that. 18 out of 35 times that an opponent has entered Florida's red zone, they've scored. That's 51.4%. That's 23rd nationally. It's pretty good. For a defense that has as many holes as Florida has shown this season, and I'll go over some more stats in a second, that was impressive. They've got a lot of other numbers that are awful, but they bow up at the end. So Florida State needs to be able to, A, run the ball consistently, stay ahead of the chains. That's obvious. And keep Luke out of those obvious passing downs where Florida's really good blitz package. They did a tremendous job against Ole Miss and Kiffin. They had them off balance all day. UF outcoached them. There is no doubt about it. If you're not going to be ahead of the sticks, or at least on par, getting 4 yards on first down, this game could be a slaughter. You must be able to run the ball on 1st and 10. You must be able to basically tell them you're going to run the ball on 1st and 10. I know that's not what you want to hear as a Florida State person, but you're not a up-and-coming passing game yet. You're the ones just getting started. It was still Charleston Southern last weekend, and while they did what they should, there's no evidence against a quality opponent for Luke Romanhawk yet, and these receivers, and most importantly, the offensive line that they can pass protect. 3 sacks in the first half is not a good sign. I'm very concerned about that. So again, if you cannot get 3.5, 4 yards a carry minimum on first down runs, this will be a long game for the Noles. Secondarily, with this, if you can do that, here's a stat again that's just ridiculous. This should never, ever be the case at any SEC school, Vanderbilt included, but Florida is still 132nd in passing plays of 20 or more that they've given up. That is pathetic. Florida State has a ton of speed, and they've got a ton of size with the tight ends that are very athletic. If you run the ball efficiently, doesn't have to be great, you open up the opportunity to get the ball down the field in big plays. The other part of that is Florida's not always, it's improved, I'll give them that. They're not always great at tackling, whether it's a screen or a short pass. Again, they get out of position. If you're 132nd, you're not making good mental decisions as a staff or as player. Like, there's been all kinds of screw ups. They're bad. Ole Miss still hit a ton of big plays against them. Part of them were, Ole Miss got a lot of talent and they got some experience at receiver and tight end, but Florida helped them with that. They had coverages that just didn't work. Now, how does Florida State best serve this? It's not really anything different than what we saw with Ole Miss. The tight ends will be valuable. Armari and Landon are good. I'm not saying the other upperclassmen, maybe West or somebody catches a pass too. I don't know. But I imagine that Armari and Landon are going to be the keys to that game. Short, long, corner, deep post, anything you can imagine. When they can get Florida in a circumstance where they've got to cover the receivers, and they, even for a half a second, discount one of those freshman tight ends, they can strike. They've proven it. They're very good, talented players in the open field. I don't think Florida will do a good job there. It's proven all year, and they couldn't cover Ole Miss's tight end either. I think you're going to see the Gators struggle a little bit there. Finally, we've seen it a little bit and started to against Charleston Southern. And again, I know it's Charleston Southern, but FSU threw some really good plays at them with the RPO, deep passes to Mekhi Danzy, the backup running back, the true freshman. He's a guy that can fly. I think you're going to see him make some big plays. I don't think that Florida is going to be able to figure out exactly what FSU is going to do yet, because I'm not sure Florida State completely knows their own game plan, because this is only the second week that Luke has been the true quarterback. So there's going to be some new stuff. If you're going to throw the kitchen sink at somebody, it's going to be a rival, Miami and Florida. Well, that's also a part of it, in addition to it's new. Florida's probably going to have to guess some, and that's just part of college football. But to their advantage, again, they did a really good job in the red zone, so they've got to somehow mitigate some of those 20-yard pass plays and at least slow down Florida State's running game, which honestly shouldn't be that hard. Florida State's a terrible running team, no doubt about it. But with Cam Davis back, Sam Singleton playing better, and Tofila's always been a good guy, I'm curious, maybe they can get some chunk yardage run plays too. Don't discount that. The other part with getting those big passing plays, I don't know if Florida State will do this. This is not their MO. I want to talk about this, and then we'll go on to break. We'll talk about some other 5 more keys. Max protection. What does that mean? And should FSU use it against UF? 6 or 7 is what you're talking about. Usually max means 7. That's not very common in college anymore in the spread. But if you think that UF is going to run those overload blitzes, those late shifts, I have a very bad feeling about how Florida State's going to handle that in the moment. Ball starts. Keep track of that in this game. If Florida State goes max protect, go ahead and bring 6. Go ahead and bring 7. It's at least a hat on a hat, theoretically. And then one thing Kromenhoek can do, he's got a gun, so he can launch it. He's got a natural ability to throw the deep ball. I think they can hit some of those. But it's coaches, as I've said a million times on this show, they're the most stubborn people on earth. They would almost rather lose than change their system. They hate the word change. They're going to have to do that because Florida State's offensive line stinks at pass protection anyway. And I'm telling you, mark it down. The Gators are going to bring the house in passing situation. Why wouldn't you? It worked against Ole Miss, who has a better O-line than what FSU does. That's easy pick. They're going to do the same thing. And Kromenhoek's true freshman. One of the ways you beat up on true freshman quarterbacks is to bring the pressure, like literally just show it early sometimes. You're going to get hit even if you throw this pass. Sometimes freshmen don't handle that well. When we come back, we're going to talk more Noles and Gators. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Florida State's got to hit the big plays. They're going to have to change some things. And here's the next part of that. I've talked about it multiple times already in this show. Got to hit the deep ball. That's true, but here's the nuance. Again, the key word here is change. How much is Florida State willing to change up how they do things? I bring this up for 2 reasons. Number one, you're going to need to scheme up something, a free touchdown. I know that sounds kind of goofy, but do I think Florida State's just going to play Florida straight up and beat them? Lagway is way better right now than what Kromenhoek is, in my opinion. Not that Luke's bad, but DJ's a future top 5 pick. Anybody disagrees with that, you're probably looking at this through Florida State lens, or you just haven't watched him play. Elite talent. Very, very good. I don't care if he is a true freshman. He's not like a freshman. This is a unique player. You've got to score upper 20s to low 30s to win this game. And if you don't, you're going to get smacked. You must scheme open big passing plays, meaning bust. Now, again, for about the 100th time, and I'll probably say it several more, 132nd on my sheet. That's what Florida State is, or Florida is in passing plays, giving up 20 or more yards. Garbage. They are terrible at making mental errors. You don't give up that many big passing plays unless your defense is dissolving in the middle of a play and guys just wide open. Missed tackles. Things of that nature. And there's 50-50 balls. They're playing a really tough schedule this year. I get that. But Florida is abysmal at this. There's no reason they shouldn't spend some more time as a Florida State staff figuring out how to scheme this up down the field. You are not going to scheme it up and go 4 yards of play for 15 play drives against Florida's defense. Not with a true freshman and that offensive line. Zero chance. You might have one drive like that where you get aided by a 15-yard face mask or something like that, a defensive. You need a free first down at least to get one of those, even one of those drives in this game, in my opinion. You're going to need special teams plays, etc. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But you've got to hit chunk yardage plays. I don't care how they do it. It needs to be plays, though, that has not been on film this year. 0 reps. Because every staffer in UF's room is going to be going through all that stuff, which they should, to try to take it away. New plays has not been run a single freaking time this year. We'll find out if Florida State can scheme up some of that. And then, of course, there's just the basic. Let's run Malik on a stop and go. Landon Thomas, switch release with Ja'Kai. They kind of hustle towards Ja'Kai because he's your leading receiver. He's your main guy. Okay, I get it. But they got to come up with something. And it could even be a trick play. It could be the Statue of Liberty. It could be a flea flicker. Adding something like that into it, I'm fine with. But I'm talking about traditional play, something they have not shown this year. It is massive. Florida State must do that to have a chance in this game. Number 4, this is one of the things that I think can help set up the big passing plays, and it's why I mentioned it next. Option plays / RPO. Kromenhoek is a very good athlete. He does a pretty good job with ball fakes and carrying out all his little reads off the side. If he has an opening, he's proven it multiple times this year, he'll take off. He's not a super shifty runner, but if you fake out the DN, you get around the edge, unless you get tackled by the grass in Doak Campbell Stadium, it's 10-plus yards. That is one of the other ways. They're not necessarily choke plays, 10, 12 yards. That's okay. You move the chains, you keep the defenders with their eyes in the backfield. That half second against Florida State speed, Ja'Kai, Malik, Jalen, B.J. Gibson, Landon Thomas, Amari Williams, all these players have speed. Hakeem, he's got the height and size too. There is no way that you can't tell me there isn't an RPO where you run the same action off an option play that you ran in the first quarter, but then it's a play action that you can't get one of those for a touchdown. That's an extension of what I was just talking about a moment ago with throwing the ball down the field. Florida State should be able to do that. So here are a couple of the players in particular they need to keep their eyes in the backfield because they're really good for Florida and it played well against Ole Miss. This Caleb Banks kid, I don't think he was supposed to be a dude, but he's a rise. Give the kid credit. He had 2.5 sacks against Ole Miss. Props. Defensive tackle, they're going to have to figure out a way to scheme against him. Defensive lineman Tyreek Sapp, he had 3 tackles, two tackles for loss, sack and a half. Power player, he can play edge or inside, very talented. And then in their secondary, this is bizarre. Trikweze Bridges, 11 tackles and a pass breakup, but crazy number here. You could say defensive player of the week nationally. Bryce Thornton, 14 tackles and 2 picks against Ole Miss. He's pretty good. So I know I was talking about all the weird stuff with them giving up big plays, but if you don't scheme it up, they'll also create big plays. Florida is the ultimate feast or famine defense. And I'm sure Gator fans, which will comment in my section on YouTube, will talk about this. You don't know what you're going to get play to play. But it's not a lack of physical talent. They've got dudes. James, the linebacker, will play in the NFL. He only had 4 tackles against Ole Miss, but he's very good. I think that these guys are going to be key in getting after the FSU O-line, like that front seven, especially Tyreek and Caleb, those big D linemen. They give me a lot of hesitation. You could argue those are the 2 most important players in this game, even above the quarterbacks, because if they're stuffing FSU, or at least helping stuff FSU at the line of scrimmage on runs, this game will be over. Do I think Florida State's going to consistently block them? I don't know, but that's why I come into the next point, and that's screens. When guys have success as sacks and tackles for loss get added up and they're having big, and when guys like me giving them a claim, they tend to get out of their own head a little bit and out of the game plan the next week. Hey, I'm just going to do this. If you get overzealous, Florida State, the one thing they don't lack is speed. They got plenty of guys that can run. You give Tofield a backdoor, he gone. If you give it to Sam Singleton, he had a 95-yard kickoff return for a touchdown this year. He's gone. Florida State can really, really run. It's not a newsflash, but that screen game, I know it's not easy to practice, but there's a chance with a running back screen, a generic, ran it 50 times this year kind of play, could score. I think Florida State should try to take advantage of that and maybe a reverse or something to Ja'Kai or whichever. Again, they got plenty of guys that can run it. There's a chance to break out because I don't expect Florida to be as consistent as they should be in protecting the run gap fits or their pass rush lanes. How that works when they blitz is also important, but just a 4-man rush for UF, I expect it to be inconsistent. It still may not matter because Florida State's O-line is garbage until otherwise proven. But you can beat them with big plays. And again, Luke is proven as a deep ball thrower. I've seen it since he was sophomore in high school. He's just got a natural affiliation with it. I don't know why. He just likes to throw deep, and he's very good at it. He'll hit a play or two. But if you can get that to 3 or 4, then maybe throw in a screen or reverse where you catch UF in a bad spot, somebody's out of position, you might get a 70-yard touchdown that is, quote-unquote, schemed up for one of those free touchdowns I was talking about. You can get a couple of them, you can win. You need one, in my opinion, to keep this close. I think Florida's 10 points or more better than Florida State right now. But at the same time, they're still a team that is so up and down. Lord only knows what they're going to do from play to play. When I come back, we're going to talk a little bit more, finish up this list. And then we're going to talk about something that I'm thinking that Florida State can really take advantage of against UF. That is next on Locked on Seminoles. Have you downloaded the Gametime app yet? It's your place to get your tickets for concerts, for plays, baseball, basketball, football. I was just checking out the Florida versus Florida State game. There are plenty of tickets available there. And for a guy like me, it's a really cool way to do it because I can see where I'm going to be sitting, where I would be from that point to look out on the Duke Campbell Stadium's field and just quite honestly have a purview of what's going on. Every seat is different and you can do it from your phone. They also, if you want to do it this way, have something called Gametime Picks, just for general, that filters out all the fluff and shows you the incredible deals for a multitude of games. And there's all kinds of tickets, so it saves you a little bit of time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Florida State has a chance against Florida, but I think most of the things I'm talking about here have to hit. And this is the one that's the most risky. Quarterback runs. And I'm not talking RPO, and I'm not talking about, okay, the pocket's collapsed and I got to exit stage right. Designed quarterback runs. And I want to bring up two factions, and debatable, possibly a third. I don't think Florida State will do the third one, but number one, middle of the field, 2nd and 6. Looks like they're going to throw it. They're in 4 wide, 5 wide. Just run quarterback draw. Again, he's not the shiftiest guy in the world, but Luke Kromenhoek is athletic enough, strong enough, go get you 3 to 5 yards pretty consistently. Make Florida adjust to you. Obviously, you don't want your quarterback getting hit. You got to talk to Luke about it. Just dive down, whatever. That's a coaching moment. He's a young guy. He's very competitive. Trust me. I know him well enough to say he is very competitive. Don't want him taking a ton of hits, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few of those. And it could be quarterback sweep, could be quarterback, but I have no idea. Excuse me, but I think they should try that in general in the middle of the field. Where it gets interesting is red zone. I definitely think you get an extra hat that way. And I brought it up earlier. Cam Davis. He's my number one thing I put on this. Short yardage runs, short yardage block. He's 220 pounds, and he is chiseled. Using him in the pass game, you could use him in the screen. He's not the guy who could score. But leading Kromenhoek through the gap on the 2-yard line, not many guys want to run in to Cam. That's a really strong young man. So that's a possibility. And then finally, I know that 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, Cam's probably my first option, maybe Tofili. But it's not out of the question that Kromenhoek gets the call there too, or they at least go RPO with it and utilize it. So we'll talk about that. Looking at their rush defense, the Gators, they're up and down all over the map. So seasonal statistics are a little iffy for this game because Florida's playing better than this, in my opinion, but they're 87th nationally. So you can do a different play throughout the game and just mix it up. But you should have a bread and butter if you think you can beat them with inside zone, if it's RPO to the wide side, whatever it is. Florida's probably not going to do a great job of it. And to be very clear, Jackson Dart had some success running the football against the Gators. They're not tremendous with the run gap fits. They're not. They don't always stay in their pass rush lane. So Kromenhoek will have some success there. And again, overall, they're 406 yards a game they give up. That's 103rd. Not exactly great. Scoring's 25.5. That's 74th. Obviously, that's not great either. I think there's yards to be had if you're just consistent with mixing up your play calls. That's not too much to ask, and I think anybody can. Finally, just red zone in general. I talked about this towards the top of the show. 0-for-3 for Ole Miss. But there's a caveat. When they had Judkins leave, that was the killer for them. And I know a lot of Ole Miss fans, I've heard the stories. He can be a jerk. He had problems. Jackson Dart didn't like him. Totally get it. Here's the problem. Henry Parrish, good running back for Ole Miss, but he's hurt. He didn't play against UF, and they didn't really have a true running back. That doesn't work in the Southeastern Conference or any other league. They were using a receiver / running back, and they didn't have a power guy. Jackson had to take more hits than he probably wanted to be honest. And it really struggled to manifest itself in the red zone because I know they got that Big East or whatever. That guy's a great athlete. FSU's got running backs. That's not an issue. I think they will have far more success in the red zone than what Ole Miss did. And all you got to do is hit 1 out of 3 to be better than them. But short yardage and red zone in general, I think Florida State will be better. I expect them to scheme it up. I know coaches say we just do 1 week at a time. BS. There is no way in the world you're telling me that 100% of their effort over the last month was to each game and there weren't plays they were thinking about and or guys in the back that do analytics that weren't looking ahead to the Florida game. Same for UF, for Florida State. BS. Liars, liars, liars. There are going to be play calls, even in short yardage, even out of a bunch formation, everybody lined up, and it looks basically like a scrum. There's going to be a play action pass, a screen you haven't used, something like that in the red zone to try to catch the Gators off guard. You have to do that if you're going to have, again, any chance. I think Florida's 10 to 14 points better than Florida State. I have no idea what the line is, but that's my opinion. And if you do not come up with things like that in the red zone, yeah, Florida State's offensive line doesn't deserve any credit because they've been awful this year. Maybe the worst in the Power Four. I think you're going to have to scheme up some stuff in the red zone, but surely you can get at least 1 out of 3 touchdowns. And here's the extra. Florida State's punter and kicker to that are excellent. You should get better field position because of them. Master Mono might be as valuable as a guy as there is. I don't talk about specialists very much, but if you get a 55, 60 yarder and flip the field and get a turnover, you can use some of this stuff and keep Florida State in the game. A couple other quick notes here, and it's about Florida imploding. Everybody's picking Florida to win, and they should. They're the better football team. But if they struggle in the first quarter and or get down, they've shown a propensity, well, since Billy's been there, to shoot themselves in the foot, especially on special teams. Why should I think, or anybody else out there watching, that suddenly that's just fixed? If you think that, I don't care if you're a Gator fan, Florida State fan, or anybody else that doesn't even care. You're watching or listening to this pod on Apple or Spotify, whatever. I'm telling you, there's going to be a play in this game. You're like, yeah, that's right. Billy Napier is still the head coach at Florida. He's a very mediocre coach. I know Florida fans are all excited and think they're turned around. I hope Napier's at Florida for a long time for 2 reasons. Number one, he seems like a pretty nice guy. 2, he's mediocre. They're not ever sniffing a national title with Billy Napier there. One of the reasons is they suck on special teams in big games. They will screw up something. There will be a drop punt, 12 men on the field, 10 men on the field, call the block punt when they shouldn't have, and Florida State sets it up and flips the field, whatever it is. I guarantee you there will be a dumb play from Billy Napier's staff. He's proven it for 3 years. Why would this Saturday's game be any different? There's no reason. And overall, I cannot stress this enough. I expect at least 1, are you kidding me, free touchdown for Florida State in the passing game. I expect them to struggle in the pass protection, and Florida's going to have a heyday getting in the backfield. No doubt about it. But Krummenhoek is a really good thrower, and he's a guy that especially has a deft touch down the field. I think Florida State's going to hit some of those, and this game will be a lot closer than most think. Tomorrow, I'll go more over Florida State's defense against UF's offense. I need to really kind of dig back in and watch Wagley a little more. This is more subjective because they've been in and out of the lineup with the quarterback. It's really hard just to talk about UF's stats. That's not fair to DJ, them, or even Florida State. It's a really challenging situation to try to analyze that because not a whole lot more. He's played just part of the time. He's got as much talent as anybody in college football, but there isn't enough for me to analyze or anybody else to give a definitive answer. Going to come up with some stuff on that. Later today, I'm going to do another pod just kind of talking about some of the traditions of this game and also go over some more stats. So thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Make sure you check us out on Spotify, on Apple, YouTube Music, wherever you take your pods to go. If you're on the car, on the go, at the gym. I'm a big gym guy listening to podcasts. Make sure you do it. And you can find me on X at FBScout_Florida. That's at FBScout_Florida. I will see you again later today.